Wonderful. Over to you, Harriet.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jesse, and good morning again to everybody. It's great to be here early this morning to again look at the 7 habits of highly effective people. And this week, or this Thursday, we are looking at habit 3. Please allow me to switch off my video. We, again, as usual in the mornings, we don't have power here. I think because everybody's using the line that we are on. So I'll switch my video off so it's not distracting. Okay, so habit 3. Remember, we are looking at these habits not as a formulation of my own, but it is from the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And I trust that every single one of us on the call in some way is endeavoring to read the book. If you don't have the book, please look for it, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, written by the late Stephen Covey. This book I know is readily available in a number of bookshops in Kampala, especially in the Aristoc booklets, and it would be great if you have your own copy. Because what we do here, just to give you nuggets, and I just take out things from there that I think would be very relevant for us as people who are into business or people who would like to make sure they're effectively living in their personal lives. Remember, we did say that private victory always precedes public victory. And so we are people who know that if we are doing well personally in our lives, in our private lives, then our public lives become places where it is easy to be effective and to be successful. So habit 3 is putting first things first. And the principles that go with this particular habit are 4. The principle of focus. Are we as leaders able to focus on those things that matter? The things that matter in our lives? Do we know the things that matter? Remember that the last engagements we've had, we talked about the circle of influence, coming out of your circle of concern. Are you able to pick out from your circle of concern, the circle of your circle of influence, and focus there to make sure that you're effective in those areas? And then the principle of integrity. Integrity means I am the same person in private as I am in public. Or some people would say, what you see is what you get. Can I be integral, first of all, to myself and say, these are the areas that I need to be working on to be effective, and therefore I will work on them. And as you can see, we are looking at the 7 habits of highly effective people. Are there those habits that I can say, this is where I find I am weak, and therefore I will focus on those and be integral to myself to do what it takes? Then that principle of discipline. Discipline means I subordinate myself to do those things that I need to do. And I do it as a habit day after day. This is what informs the kind of things that I do, informs my behavior. And then prioritization. Am I able to look at what is priority in my life, pick it out, and choose to work with that priority that I have picked out? So those are the principles that govern the habit 3. Now, remember we talked about paradigms and practices. Paradigms are how do you see the world, or how do you think concerning the things that are around you? And Steve Covey says that the common paradigm is I spend time on what is most urgent. And the common practices there would be, let me spend most of my time on managing crises and people's agendas. Let me try to do everything. Remember, we're talking about the circle of concern. Let me try to do everything within my circle of concern. The other practice under the common paradigms that are not in the habit 3 are that I plan sporadically, or I don't plan at all. In other words, what comes is what goes, okay? As you'd hear some say, whatever comes is what I'll go with. And then the last practice is I give into the pressure of the moment. So what is the pressure of the moment? I give into that pressure. But those who are highly effective in their lives spend time on what is most important. And there the practices are, I focus on my highest priorities because I have chosen what is priority in my life and I focus there. I eliminate the unimportant things in my life. I cut them off. I cut them out of my diary. And I plan every week, not every day, but I plan every week. And then I stay true to the moment of choice, meaning that if I have chosen, this is the way I'm going to live my life. If I've chosen that this is the important thing, if I've chosen that this is of highest priority to myself, then I stay true to that moment. And that lines up with the principle of integrity. So putting first things first is made up of two parts. Learning to prioritize and manage your time. Okay, we don't plan our time. When we're talking about time, it is about managing it. It's about saying all of us have 24 hours. How am I going to manage my time? And it's also learning to overcome fear and peer pressure. Now, when you talk about peer pressure, we usually think about young people, teenagers, and we keep saying they're giving into peer pressure. But it's very interesting that adults also give into peer pressure. In other words, because so-and-so now is driving a TX, therefore the peer pressure is, I too must have that TX. Or because so-and-so happens to be living in a particular area, therefore I too must work so hard to live in that particular area. That is peer pressure. As some people will say, I want to be like the Joneses and the Musokes are, and not look at your own self and ask yourself, what is it that will help me be effective, not dependent on what other people are doing, but get into a place where I'm confident and not fearful about what's going on around me, but I know what is priority for my own life. Those are the two things that make up the habit, first things first. Now, Joan Goethe says, things which matter most must never, and I should have put never in bold, in red, and underlined. Things that matter most must never be at the mercy of things that matter least, which means, again, and this is going to be emphasized right through this particular presentation, what are the things that matter most to you? What are the things in your life that you need to zero down on and forget about the things that matter least? The main thing in habit 3, when you've gone through the whole chapter of the book, for me, what came out as the main thing was that how to manage my time and understanding that important is always fighting against the urgent. We are always in our day, we are always in our lives, struggling between these two things. What is important? What is urgent? What should I attend to? What should I not attend to? And so what is the difference? Important are those activities that represent your mission or purpose. They revolve around your roles, values, and high priority goals. Remember, in the last engagements we've had, we've talked about mission, we talked about vision, we talked about purpose. So you are asking yourself, what activities in my week focus around or revolve around my roles, my values, my mission, and my highest priority goals? Urgent are those activities that require your immediate attention. They're those things that come into your life and they're saying, deal with me first, deal with me first, deal with me first. You keep hearing them calling out to you for your attention. Those are the urgent things. And as I said, as we go through our week, we are constantly struggling between the important and the urgent. And so we have this time management matrix. And I'm sure for a number of you on this call, this might be a revision. It is something you have come across. It is something you have engaged with. And it's something you may actually already be engaging with. And so it is great for us to go back to it and remind ourselves what this means. So you have a matrix just like this, where you have the urgent and not the urgent, and the important and not the important. Now, according to this matrix, we have 4 quadrants. Under the urgent and important is where you find the crises, those emergencies. A child is sick. I had a child on the call coughing. A child wakes up in the morning, is sick. That's an emergency. Last minute deadlines, pressing problems, and unforeseen events. Then you have the 3rd quadrant, quadrant 3, which is right below quadrant 1. And these are the urgent and not important. They're urgent, but they're not important. Needless interruptions, unnecessary reports, irrelevant meetings. I don't know how many of you have been part of an organization where you have a boss who's constantly calling for meetings, and you get into that meeting and you find, I really don't have to be here. I could have actually have been somewhere else doing something that is more relevant to my role in this organization. Other people's minor issues, where you find people always coming to you to sort out those minor issues, which at the end you keep asking yourself, did I really have to get involved in this particular problem? I think they could have been solved without my presence. Unimportant email. You know, many of us subscribe to a lot of things. And when you wake up in the morning and you put your email on, it's those things that are there. For those who are on Gmail, to be under promotions or social, and the ones that come up, and you find before you have gone through even half of your morning, you find that you've been concentrating on these emails. They may be urgent, but they're not important. Then there are those phone calls, status posts, okay? These are under the urgent, but not important. In other words, like I said, they're urgent because they are calling out for your attention, but you know the life will not stop if you don't actually attend to them. Then you have quadrant 4, which goes right across from quadrant 3. And this quadrant is where you have trivial work, the avoidance activities, excess relaxation like television, gaming, and internet. Basically, this particular quadrant is a time waster. It's the quadrant which takes up a lot of your time. And at the end of it, you ask yourself, why was I actually here? And you even feel guilty because you actually know that your time has been wasted there. And then you have quadrant 2, where you have proactive work, important goals, the areas where you're thinking critically, creative thinking about what you need to do, how you can achieve your goals, you're planning, you're building relationships, you're learning, and you're renewing yourself. Now, if you had to give a title to each one of those quadrants, quadrant 1 would be called the quadrant of necessity. Quadrant 2 would be the quadrant of effectiveness. Quadrant 3 would be the quadrant of distraction. And quadrant 4 would be the quadrant of waste. And what you're trying to do is to make sure that you get into a place where you're constantly making sure that your quadrant of waste and your quadrant of distraction are dealt with as fast as possible in your day. You're getting rid of them off your plate or off your table so that you can focus on the quadrant of effectiveness. In other words, get rid of the waste first, decide in your mind, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to get involved in this quadrant. Whatever is there that seems to be calling out for my attention, I'm going to deal with it as quick as possible so that before I get into my day, it is out of my life. And then you're going to go to your quadrant 3 and ask yourself, what are those chronic activities in your workplace that you can either eliminate, reduce, or delegate? In other words, there are those things that you know don't really need you to get involved in them. What is it that you can be able to reduce on your time or actually get out of this quadrant so that eventually this is what your time matrix should look like? You have completely got rid of the quadrant 4. You have reduced on your distractions. You have quickly dealt with the area of necessity that is calling out to your attention. For example, you have a child who maybe has fallen sick. You quickly get them to the clinic and maybe hand them over to somebody else who can be able to look after them so that you can focus on your quadrant 2. And so your quadrant 2 becomes the biggest quadrant in your time management matrix. Now, how do we make sure that our quadrant 2 is effectively utilized. And Stephen Covey says, if you were to ask me what single practice would do more to balance your life and increase your productivity, which means cause you to make full use of your quadrant 2, it would be this: plan your week each week before the week begins. Now, many of us tend to plan our day at the beginning of the day. A lot of us have that to-do list that we keep ticking off. But Steve Covey says the best way to plan your quadrant 2 is to plan weekly. Organized on a weekly basis provides for much greater balance and context than daily planning. The key is not to prioritize what is on your schedule, but to schedule your priorities. And this can be best done in the context of the week. What is he saying here? You first of all say, what are my priorities? Then schedule them. Rather than having a schedule of saying, I need to do these 20 things, and now which one is priority? So you still have your 20, and then you're trying to put them, which is the most important, which is the least important, and you're going through and you still have the 20. But when you choose to schedule your priorities, you will find that the priorities will reduce from the 20 and maybe just to 5. Again, it goes back to the sphere of concern as we look at finding out in that sphere or in that circle, what is your circle of influence. And so I want to leave you with a tool that I use and that Steve Covey recommends for planning. And in this tool, I call this the weekly planner. And what it is you need to do is to ask yourself, what are the most important roles in my life? And I have chosen for myself to have 5 important roles. Those roles I must focus on in the week. If there's anything out of these roles that comes into my life, I know that it's either in the quadrant 4, which is a quadrant of waste, or it is in the quadrant 3, which is a quadrant of distraction, and I need to quickly get rid of them and make sure that I'm focusing in my quadrant 2. So I ask myself, what are my 5 roles? The other thing to focus on is what Steve Covey calls sharpening the saw. What are those areas in your personal life that you know need to be constantly worked on? And I have put them down as physical, mental, spiritual, and social and emotional, or what I sometimes call fun. And once you have this template, you sit down on a Sunday and begin to fill it in. That's what I do. On a Sunday, I sit down and fill this in weekly for my week. And so for myself, I've decided the roles in my life that are most of the 5 roles in my life that are so important at this in my season is my family. INT is where I work, so you could put there work. I'm a student, a PhD student, that is an important role. I have a ministry that is called Castle that I really know that I need to be focusing on. I am a Toastmaster, which is an area that is very important to me, and I'm a friend and a mentor. Those are the 5, no, actually 6. They're the 6 roles in my life that are very important. And so I sit down and I ask myself, what do I want to do? What are the goals in this particular week? And as you can see there, I've chosen to show you the week beginning on the 24th of April, 2023. So what are the goals that I want for those particular roles in my life? And as you can see, the goals for INT was to sort out finances and to sort out the student classroom. As a PhD student, I had those assignments. Under ministry that week, there was nothing happening. I didn't have a particular goal. Under Toastmasters, I have a school that I train the young people on public speaking. And as a friend and a mentor, I have some mentors in the governance course I needed to focus on. Now, some of you may ask, what happened to family? In this particular week, there was no major goal I had in my family. It was the routine of being a homemaker, looking after my home. There wasn't one particular thing that I needed to focus on. And then I go into my week at the top, and I spread those particular goals over my week. And I spread them out so that I'm not focusing only on one particular day. And you can see that is at the top. So once I've done that, then I go to sharpening the saw, which is my personal life. What am I doing for Harriet to sharpen her? And under physical, you can see there's exercise. Under mental, I have book reviews, the books I need to read. In my spiritual life, I'm a Bible study fellowshipper. And under fun, which is a spiritual, the emotional, I love to crochet. And then I come to the details of the time and I fix all that in. And once I have done that, anything outside of this has to fall around these goals or around this time. And as you can see, I try to plan from 5 up to 10, because 10 is usually when I try to get to bed and 5 is when I wake up. What kind of exercise I'm supposed to get involved in? Now, I try to exercise by swimming. And so I'll put there, I'm going to swim or something like that. Okay. So I'd like to end there and hand over to Jesse. I know he usually wants some time to feed into what I've said, but basically what I'm saying is for habit 3, it is planning your time and planning it weekly, being able to focus on those things that are most important to you and being in control of what you have planned and being disciplined to effect it. Over to you, Jesse.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Harriet. Thank you for bringing this home. Thank you for landing it so well. And I really appreciate you for making it even practical, sharing with us your personal plan, how you go about planning your week, and how effective that makes you to be. Harriet, I would like to ask you something. How do you exercise self-discipline to stay focused on what matters?
Okay, what I've done, Jesse. Oh, yes. Sorry.
Please go right ahead.
What I've done, Jesse, is to have people who hold me accountable. Okay. There are 4 people in my life who have allowed to speak into my life and hold me accountable. And it's a discipline we've been very intentional. We are very intentional. We meet every quarter, but we also meet every Sunday. And when we meet on Sundays for a short time, 30 minutes, okay, what is it that you agreed to do in this quarter? How are you being able to get it done? Then we go away for a retreat every 3 months and speak into those areas. So I find personally, that is what has helped me to be disciplined, because I know that people who are going to ask me about what I have committed myself to.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I personally must say, when I first did this book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, we did it as a masterclass and people kept dropping off until I was left alone. So what happened is there was an activity that we had to do, and that activity was writing your personal mission statement. So the person leading the mastermind kept asking me, Jesse, when am I having it? When am I having it? I literally did it because he wanted it. But that's when I realized that where there is accountability, there is no room for procrastination. When you are accountable to someone, then you resist the temptation to procrastinate, to put things aside until a later time. So I appreciate that input on accountability, right? And then how much time do you spend planning? Say you talked about planning a week. When do you do this and how much time goes into that?
I usually do it on a Sunday. And now that it has become a habit, it just takes me 20 minutes. At the beginning, I would take quite a lot of time because I'm trying to think through. But now, because I am very clear about my goals and I've been doing it over time, at the most, it will be 30 minutes. But I can even do it in 15 to 20 minutes.
Great. Thank you. So what is key here is taking aside time to plan. Because there's a common saying that when you fail to plan, you have planned to fail. Okay, so when you fail to plan, when you don't plan intentionally, what you have done is that you have actually planned. But what you have planned is that you have planned to fail. So as you plan, as the distributors on the call, most of us being involved in the near life business, one of the things that you want to do is think about the main activities that you have to do in the course of the week. Activities like your prospecting, activities like presenting, activities like following up, all those activities. And then you also have these other things like delivering products. Now you can imagine if you had to deliver every product that your customers ask for, you would literally spend the whole day delivering products. So as Harriet was speaking, I was thinking, things like delivering products, yes, there are those that I personally prioritize to deliver, especially when it's a new client or when you're still building that level of rapport. But recently, I was shocked to pass by a customer. I was in the area. And when I went to see her, it dawned on me that I had probably last seen her physically before COVID. And yet she orders every month, because over time I've built a system where when someone places an order, I do the payment and then someone picks it and delivers it. So having a system that will help you to focus on what matters the most, focusing on what matters the most. And then as you bring in more people in the business, you now realize that what matters the most is giving those people time and attention. It would be a disservice to you and to your people if you bring in 10 people and you don't have time for them because you're busy, doing other things, maybe. And there's nothing wrong with delivering products, but that's the easiest thing that quickly comes to mind. So you have brought in people, but then you don't have time for them. So in a way, that is not being helpful to them, because they become priority. The moment you sponsor someone, they immediately become important. So focus on the things that are important, even in the business. Look at what matters most, and then you give it more time, more attention. Look at your personal development. In fact, we have the 4 success habits. Number 1 is using the product. That is a daily thing that we do. Number 2 is sharing your life, and then that means sharing the products and also sharing the opportunity. And then number 3 is personal development. So integrating these things into your day, integrating these things into your week. And then aside from that, we have mentoring new distributors, supporting my team, doing the weekly training. So that helps you to have a schedule and to have a system. Because in one of the books that we discussed earlier, that was a book by James Clear called Atomic Habits, we said, you do not rise to the level of your goals. Rather, you fall to the level of your system. The system. So yes, you could have a goal to become a director, but what system do you have in place? How do you manage your time? What activities are you doing in the course of the month? How many people are you seeing every day? How many presentations are you making every week? How many follow-ups are you making every week? At the end of the day, those are the things that are going to bring you to the level of achieving your goal. Otherwise, if you set the goal, but you don't have the system in place, then it's not going to yield much. We talk about daily activity, exercise, for example. How many times do you exercise in a week? And what I'm gathering from here is that you will not make the time to do something if you don't plan to do it. You will not make the time. You will think that time is not there, and yet it's actually there. You spend it on other things. And truly, one thing that has happened over time is, I don't know if it happens to you sometimes, but I find that sometimes I can get my phone to go to WhatsApp to reply a message. And then on your way to the message, you come across this group, everyone is commenting on something, and then you also click on it, and then you watch it, and then now, meanwhile, 10 minutes have passed, 15 minutes have passed, 20 minutes, you have not yet even replied the message that you said you were going to reply, but you have already spent 20 minutes on what does not matter. So what I'm literally saying is that time is the only asset we have. Managing it is the most important priority that we should have. So thank you so much, Harriet. This has given us something to go and chew on. Let's go and focus on what matters, because at the end of the day, it is the priorities that count. So that brings us